Alrighty, welcome back to another News of the Week episode. So, a couple of days ago, we found out when exactly the regular season is going to begin. Well, today, we've officially found out when exactly preseason is going to begin, as MLS has officially announced that preseason is going to start on March 8th. Now, technically, this is not the date for every single team to start their preseason, as there's actually going to be 4 MLS team that's going to be participating in the CONCACAF Champions League. That's going to get a week earlier start to their preseason as it is traditionally. And Toronto is actually going to start their preseason and start to get back to training as soon as next week, because they have to participate in the Canadian Championship final, which, despite the fact that they still have not announced when exactly that's going to happen, I'm assuming it's going to be either in late February or in March, and pretty much it's going to happen before the CONCACAF Champions League round of 16 begin in April. Now, the other thing that the league has also announced is that every single team before preseason starts for them, they have to go through this mandatory 7-day quarantine period, and that this is just kind of a COVID protocol where they want to make sure every single team is able to follow this protocol so that they don't have to potentially go through a COVID outbreak that is going to happen. And speaking of that, if there is going to be a COVID outbreak that is going to be happening in preseason, it would be very interesting to see what the league is going to do that. But either way, let's just hope that's not going to be the case. And let's just also hope that we can go through this preseason without hearing any teams that have a potential COVID outbreak, and especially near the back end of the preseason. Because the last thing we need is to have to hear a team that have to go through a COVID outbreak, and then they're going to have to delay their start of the regular season, and we're already going to have to deal with the issue of postponement that's going to be happening on the first weekend of this upcoming MLS season. But moving on, in terms of the next news, and talk about some of the signings that has happened in these last couple of days, well, it's official. Orlando City has signed Alexandre Pato on a ridiculous contract. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Did Orlando City just make the same mistake that Inter Miami did by giving Higuain money to Alexandre Pato? And the answer to that is absolutely not. In fact, Orlando City might have just kind of taught Inter Miami a lesson of how you can actually still get a well-known player in Europe that might be kind of past his prime that is coming to MLS, and you can still get him off of a bargain, because they actually signed him off of free agency. And get this, they only have to pay him in his first year of the contract of $200,000 minus all the bonus that is also included in his contract. But still, that is an absolute bargain, and that could potentially one of, if not the biggest steal in terms of a team that is able to get a well-known player on that kind of contract, on that kind of TAM deal. And because of the fact that they also only get him for that kind of contract, it doesn't really hurt them in terms of their salary cap. And I talked about how Pato is a guy that has known to have injury issue. Well, in case if he does continue to have his injury issue with Orlando City can still potentially go out and find a replacement for him, either around the league or somewhere else, and they don't have to worry about them kind of up against the salary cap. But again, either way, I think this is an absolute steal that Orlando City, of course, just got. And then remember how I said this could potentially be a high risk, high reward situation, because I thought Orlando City was going to give Pato Higuain type of money, but now the fact that they actually signed him on just such a bargain of a contract, this has all of a sudden become a low risk, high reward kind of situation. And as I said before, even if Pato does not work out for Orlando City, they can always think about finding a potential replacement, and they don't waste a lot of money because of the fact that they of course signed Pato to a really expensive kind of contract. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that NYCFC have finally acquired a player. Now, I know this has been one of the most frustrating thing for NYCFC fans have to endure, where this is kind of unusual that NYCFC has been relatively quiet this off season in terms of adding player into their roster. It seemed like this off season it's been more NYCFC selling players to other teams than them adding some players and potentially find replacement for those guys that they sold. Well, they seems that they finally might have started to begin acquiring player, and the first player that I think they have acquired this offseason is getting Danish left back Multi Emerson from, and I believe it's late BK. Anyway, either way, this is it's a Danish Super League club, and that, I don't know much about this guy, but I'm assuming he potentially is going to be a good player in MLS, because NYCFC does have a good history in terms of scouting these players that you might not think that he's a decent player because he play in let's say the Danish Super League, but they tend to have a very good scouting system, and especially with them getting City Football Group as their backing in terms of finding these hidden gems and having a lot of these good scouting department all over the world. I won't be surprised he is going to be a very decent player for NYCFC, and maybe a guy that is kind of an Anton Tinnerholm type of replacement for NYCFC. But either way, I'm pretty sure fans of NYCFC is fans of NYCFC is very happy that the club is finally thinking about adding some player, because when you look at this roster that NYCFC had, yeah, it is still very, very bare bone, and I know that they're kind of going through a transitional period, and they're trying to get rid of some of their old guards and pretty much build in a new core to the team. But coming into this season, with that kind of bare bone roster, there is definitely got to be a lot of concern that are they going to be a team that could potentially miss the playoffs for the first time since their inaugural season in MLS. Now, Atlanta United has officially acquired midfielder Thiago Sosa from River Plate. Now, from what I also read about the signing, it seemed like they actually did not make him a designated player. And you talked about earlier of how Orlando City was able to get Pato on a TAM contract. Well, this also is equally a great of a deal, and kind of a steal for Atlanta to able to acquire him only on a TAM deal, because from what I also heard earlier about how they had to pay two separate clubs like $4 to $5 million, I thought instantly that kind of transfer fee means that he's probably going to be a designated player, but instead seems like it's just going to be a TAM deal, which means that Atlanta still have one more spot left in terms of their DP, and that it's going to be very interesting to see who exactly they're going to bring in as the big name that's going to be occupying that DP spot. But either way, Atlanta, they're looking very good heading into this upcoming season. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that's going to say, well, this means that Atlanta is pretty much back, and expectation is back to where not only they're going to make it back to the playoffs, but they need to compete for MLS Cup. Well, here's the thing. When y'all look at this Atlanta roster, there is a lot of new players on this roster, and I feel like when you have a situation where you sign a lot of players during this off season and you bring a bunch of these new guys, it does take a while for those guys to kind of start know each other and build up that chemistry before they can get going. So don't be surprised if Atlanta does struggle early in the season, and that people might question, well, what's going on? Why are they struggling so early or why are they struggling early in this season when they made some big moves during the off season, and is all those big moves kind of turned into bust? Not exactly. I mean, we'll probably just wait to see whether or not it when all these guys started to kind of know each other better and build up the chemistry. That I think that's when Atlanta is going to really get going, and this could really be a very dangerous team heading into the second half of this upcoming season. Now, sticking with Atlanta, there is sources saying that Atlanta United is indeed close to finalizing a trade for Eric Rometty to the San Jose Earthquakes. Now, this is another one that I kind of mentioned in my last News of the Week episode, and as much as I was optimistic the fact that the Quakes potentially get Rometty, there's something tells me that probably this is not going to happen, because apparently for the Quakes, in terms of acquiring player, it's like pretty much winning MLS Cup whenever they acquire a player. And I thought this was just going to be another example of the Quakes decided to be cheap and decided to not pay Atlanta the amount that they want to get in order to get Eric Rometty. Well, that could still be the case, because again, this is not official that Atlanta has indeed traded Eric Rometty to the Quakes, but from multiple sources that I'm hearing, that this deal is close to finalized. I'm actually happy that for once the Quakes actually decided to maybe not cheap out a little bit and decided to get a decent kind of player. And this is also, I believe, only the second player that the Quakes have signed under the Jesse Fournette regime that we actually signed a player that is within the league. The other player was Dominic Odoro back in 2018, and he was as useful as how the Quakes was in that 2018 season. So yeah, I think if Rometty does come to the Quakes, that's going to really add a lot of competition in terms of that holding midfield role, because imagine having Rometty, Judson, and Jackson Yu in terms of that. Like, those three players in that midfield is going to be considered one of the best midfield in the league. And that, as much as I'm happy the fact that we have a good holding midfield, I am still a little concerned about the defense and also on the attacking front. But I'm guessing maybe if we do build a good holding midfield core, maybe these holding midfielders can protect our very fragile back line, and maybe that might be a way where we're not going to concede as much goals as the Quakes have been doing for these past couple of seasons. Now, speaking of defenders, the Philadelphia Union is rumored to get Scottish international center back Stuart Finley. Now, this is a guy that he is currently playing in the Scottish Championship, I believe, or in the Premier League. But either way, I think he's playing with Kimrek FC. That was the team he's playing. But this is another one of these signings that the Union is rumored, where I'm not quite sure exactly how good he's going to be fit when he does come to MLS, and that this might be more of a kind of a depth kind of signing in terms of improving their backline instead of a replacement for Mark McKenzie that they lost this offseason. Like, I know the Union backline is not a thing that they need to worry a lot because of the way that they had the best defensive record last season on their way to winning the Supporters' Shield, but a big part of that was because of Mark McKenzie being an absolute stud, and it's no surprise that eventually he was able to make the jump to Europe, and the Union was able to get a big amount of money. And that next year, potentially their back line or their center back partnership is going to be Jack Elliott and Jacob Glitzness, and both of those guys have kind of shown vulnerability before when both of them are the center back partnership with the Union. And I was thinking maybe they were going to maybe use that McKenzie money that they got this offseason to find a replacement for that, but it seems like it's just them kind of believing that the partnership of Jack Elliott and Jacob Glitzness is going to be just as good as the partnership that McKenzie and Elliott had for majority of last season. But we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case for the Union heading into next year. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and kind of moving away from talk about transfer rumors and signings, is talk about FC Cincinnati is set to play their first game at West End Stadium in mid-May, and that they're also setting to do the ribbon cutting on May 1st. So Cincinnati is going to be another team that is going to be kind of start on their road for the first couple of games, but unlike Austin FC, where Austin is going to pretty much have a very heavy road schedule, where they could potentially be playing their first 6 or 7 games on the road to start their inaugural season. Cincinnati probably will play 3 or 4 games on the road, or maybe 5 games on the road before they get their new stadium to open. And honestly, I can't wait to see how that stadium is going to look like. So far, I actually have been surprised that Cincinnati hasn't released a lot of these real-life image of how West End Stadium is, and that they've been kind of releasing with the rendering version of it. But when I look at some of the rendering version, that looked like to me could be considered one of the best stadium in the league, and probably right up there in terms of my stadium hierarchy, where it's going to be right up there and close to where Allianz Field is is going to be considered the best stadium in MLS. So yeah, I'm very excited to see how that new stadium is going to look. Hopefully by then, maybe Cincinnati is also going to be allowing limited capacity, or maybe even in a super optimistic standpoint, full capacity, the kind of crowd to be attending their first ever home game at their new stadium. But most likely it's going to be limited capacity, and that, you know, as much as I want to attend the first ever game at West End Stadium, looks like that probably is not going to happen, because, you know, money is definitely going to be very expensive to attend a game there if they do go to limit the capacity. And speaking of money, I don't have money right now in terms of trying to travel to another city and potentially go to an MLS game there. Now, finally, moving on to the last news involved DC United and RSL both released identical away kits in these last couple of days. And the reason why I say that they kind of release identical away kit is because it's basically the same type of design, where this is pretty much a situation where both teams decided to go with the usual white kind of away kit with their spawn, or with their sponsored logo right in the middle as the kind of like the only color theme that is in their white away kit alongside with the logo. And honestly, you know, I know Adidas has been trying to kind of put away that narrative, the fact that they all they do is just kind of create these lazy white kind of design for every single MLS team that is going to be their away kit, by putting some recent ones like the ones that the Union did with their away kit, where it looks absolutely amazing. And I also heard the Galaxy are also going to be going with a retro kind of away kit, going back with their green and black kind of theme for their away kit. But still, at the end of the day, it's kind of frustrating that I'm still seeing these boring white kit that is produced by Adidas for these MLS team that's going to be their away kit. And I'm really hoping that when they do announce every single team in terms of their away kit, and especially when they announce the Quakes and Minnesota away kit, let's just hope it's not a white kind of away kit that they'll be wearing this upcoming season. Because if that is the case, yeah, there's no way in the world I'm spending $90 to try to buy these boring kind of away kit. Like, I already had one of the Minnesota away kit. Well, not the Minnesota, one of the Minnesota away kit, but the current Minnesota United away kit. And yeah, I'm actually very fortunate the fact that I actually decided to buy that off of a knockoff website, because imagine if I actually spend real money to buy that away kit when it's basically just all white with the Target logo being black right in the middle. Yeah, that's probably, of course, not worth it. And I kind of still regret that decision of why in the world did I think about trying to buy that jersey when everybody says that is probably one of the worst away kit, and one of the worst jersey in the league when it was released a couple of years ago. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for this news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of all these news? And as always, if there's any news that I didn't mention on the board, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.